Listen up. The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed in this podcast belong solely to the podcast participants, and not to any participant's employer, organization, committee, or other group or individual. This podcast is for entertainment purposes only. You know, for fun. So lighten up and enjoy. Stomping Jen.
Everything's so loud.
Is it loud?
I don't know.
How you doing today?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing great. We have a really interesting guest on I'm looking forward to talking to.
Yeah.
It's Paul Richmond, who is a spoken word artist and the owner and operator of Human Error Publishing. And Paul published our good friend Joshua Stewart's book, a chapbook.
Cool.
One of his poetry chapbooks.
Very cool.
So I'm excited to talk to Paul all about that. Paul himself has published more than 6 books and performs his work with a band called Do It Now.
Do it.
Yep, and he was named National Beat Poet Laureate for the United States in 2019 to 2020, and also for the state of Massachusetts for 2017 to 2019.
Wow.
Yeah, so I have lots of questions about all of that stuff. So I'm excited to talk to Paul. Are you?
Yes.
Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right, let's go. Soft Serve Podcast. Creamy, delicious ideas without the creepy truck. Stomping Jen.
That's my name.
We're here to talk about poetry and
poetry.
Spoken word performing arts again.
Cool.
Yeah. Let's say hi to Paul. I'm going to unmute Paul and say, hey, Paul.
Hey, how's it going? You two, glad to be on the show with you.
Great. Thanks for being here. How are you doing? We're recording this somewhere around the beginning of summer. So how are things going for you?
Well, the garden really helps. You know what I mean? Putting it in the garden, hanging out there, because otherwise you're dealing with the news and, it looks like we have a pretty big wars coming on, the virus numbers back up. You could run down a list that could just make you go, really? Dr. Oz got elected? I mean, there's just some bizarre stuff out there. I try to go out to the garden.
Yeah. What kind of gardening do you like to do? Are you a vegetable, perennial, anything sort of gardener?
I definitely have a whole variety of fruit trees, but mostly vegetables. We eat a lot of out of our garden. I was going to say garlic because we plant a lot of garlic, but we eat a lot of out of our garden. So
nice.
That's always and that kind of puts us in touch with you can go out there to try to be. I think with all kinds of activities, get away from the madness, and then you deal with the climate's changed, what we can grow and what we used to grow, and are we getting enough rain? All that stuff. It was always farmers always had a problem with, do you think you're going to have a crop? But this seems more these days.
Yeah, as a gardener, somebody who likes to do that, do you notice the effects of climate change?
Well, we used to do our maple syrup. There's talk that it'll be so warm that you won't have maple syrup here, and Vermont's definitely worried about that because it's a much more of a cash crop for Vermont. I was a couple of years ago, good 5 or 6. There was a seminar in North Carolina that a friend of mine had put together, and it was about the farmers getting together, even though they couldn't legally talk about climate change in North Carolina, that they thought they should start growing what they grew in Georgia because they were seeing we're not growing what we're growing. And it looks like pecans are moving up here, so we better start growing them.
Wow,
Interesting.
Yeah. Geez. Well, you're here to talk to us about spoken word art and poetry and publishing and all that sort of stuff. So I wanted to ask you, as a spoken word artist, what does that term mean to you? And when people hear that, what should they think?
Well, you guys might, when somebody said, what are you going to be when you grow up? I don't remember my guidance counselor telling me that I could be a juggler or a spoken word artist or a poet. It wasn't like in the list of things. My history with most people hate poetry. So I call all my events word events. Though when you Google spoken word, you get religious groups, the spoken word. And then there's, and I'm not a slam artist. There's some things I like about slam, a lot of things I don't necessarily like in terms of that. I don't think it's a competition. I think we're trying to each bring out in each person and have each person kind of shine. I mean, when I've been at really good readings, it's just one person after another and nobody's really going, oh, the society gets into who's the best and all of that kind of stuff,
It's so subjective.
I sort of feel, oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I'm just saying it's so subjective. How can you decide who's the best?
That's right. Yes. Well, it's like any kind of, you mentioned award. I mean, it's like when you get an award, who's deciding? Did I send in a matchbook cover and I paid $30 and now I'm putting on my resume that I was, the king spoken word artist of Hambunka or something, who knows,
Yeah.
And so it's kind of, I don't know if there is a genre for, like all the things I listed before, we're all thinking about it, the war, there's the climate change, the viruses, my relationships, people, and how, is there an art form that when you're trying to express that, if you're not using instruments and music to mood to take you through, you're not throwing paint on a canvas to give you a sense of it being dark or light or whatever the mood is you're trying to create on the canvas, you're using words. So I think there is an artistry to it that if you practice it, you guys must see that from listening maybe to your first podcast to then 20 podcasts later, and you go, wow, okay, was I? Just so many. And I think that in itself has been a little lost, the idea that you work on a craft and that there's things to learn about the craft. And I saw from on your website that you were trying to maybe help other people who are suddenly thinking about podcasts. It's because if you start to do something over time, like I said to somebody, I said, oh, your stage presence. And I said, I've hit 1,000 stages easily.
Yeah.
So so everything that's possibly could have gone wrong on a stage has happened. And so now the nervousness about that happening, it's like, I'll deal with it, or the crowd we'll deal with it. And so it changes your presence when you go up to the stage because people feel that you're not nervous. You're not saying to them, you may not like this. Why go up? I'm going up with sort of a confidence, not a cockiness, but I've been on a stage, so I know how to fix the microphone.
Yeah, there's somebody more famous and smarter than I said something about 10,000 hours, right? You've got to put in 10,000 hours before you even become competent at something, so I would imagine, with all of that experience you have, it looks easy to somebody maybe sitting out there, but again, they're not seeing the times you went up there and bombed, like you said, right. And it didn't work out, and you learn from that, and you pull from those failures too, as well as the wonderful successes.
One thing I want to state about that, because I was in education, it's a little concerning presently, because what we're talking about is experiential learning.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it's you trusting that you will do something and then look at it and go, oh, okay, I could do that differently, or I like this part, or I like that part. And you're not asking somebody, supposedly the professionals. It's not that you shouldn't get, feedback from other people who've done it, but as if there's someone who has the answers about how it should be done. Where there's lots of ways of doing it. There's lots of ways of making it your own. And so having that confidence, I guess, to do that or feel good about it is, I'm hoping more artists will feel that we're in a society that's not really giving people opportunities to have a trust their experiential learning.
Yeah. And we're talking about these performances and spoken word art. So now would be a good time. I think I just want to give people kind of a flavor of what we're talking about. So Paul, I picked one of your more recent videos on YouTube, and I just want to tell people this video is available on Paul's YouTube channel. I'm going to put all of the links to Paul's web presences in the show notes for the podcast. So go find them. Watch as many videos as you'd like. Get a flavor. There's lots of different types of performances on there too. So, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. But this one I picked is called Killer, Where You Going with That Gun in Your Hand?
Okay.
I'm going to play this. It's about 2 minutes and 31 seconds, right? So we're going to play it and then we'll chat a little bit about it.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Everyone ready? Okay.
Yep.
Here we go.
This one.
Hey, killer, where are you doing with that gun in your hand? Hey, killer, where are you going with that gun in your hand? I'm going down to shoot him down. I'm a fully automatic weapon. I'm going to shoot him down. I'm a fully automatic weapon. Hey, killer, where you going with that weapon in your hand? I'm going into the schools because I'm going to shoot him down. I'm going into the movie theaters because I'm going to shoot him down. I'm going into crowded malls to shoot him down. I'm going into places of worship to shoot him down. I'm going to drive around town and shoot him down. Why, killer? Why? Why are you shooting him down? No one's going to laugh at me no more. No one's going to push me around no more. No one's going to put me down no more. They're going to get theirs. I'm going to shoot them down. It's my constitutional right as a law-abiding citizen. You know you can't stop bad people from doing bad things, they say. I mean, common sense, gun control. No, we're told it doesn't work. We're told it's not effective. Let's have some more thoughts and prayers while we obscure and confuse the issues and take no action. Hey, killer, put that weapon down. Hey, killer, why are you talking to me? Let me be on my way. No, killer, I can't stand by and let you be on your way. I want you to put your weapon down. I want you to stop. Stop listening to those voices of hate. Hey, killer, put that weapon down. Stop shooting everybody down. Hey, killer, stop shooting everybody down.
Ooh, that's intense.
Yeah, hopefully you can hear Tony. I mean, I was so harder with us in terms of the recording, but yeah, I just did that one live. I don't know if you guys know the song "Hey Jude."
Mm-hmm.
Hey Jude. Sorry, Hey Joe.
Is that Jimi Hendrix?
Yeah. Jimi Hendrix did it, but a whole bunch of people did that song, and it was a weird song, and it was kind of put out there, and it was kind of strange because the original song, or that one that they did, was about this guy confronting a guy who said that his wife or girlfriend was seen with another guy, and he got a gun and he was going to go shoot her because she was now with another guy. And then he was going to go to Mexico because he didn't want to get caught. But that somehow glorified that whole, it was like a weird, what do you mean? Just because, I mean, you sleep with other people. I mean, the whole women's thing, women's rights, the abuse, the being property, guys saying, no, I can shoot them, or, I'm going to use that violence because they're not doing what I want them to do. The shootings had just happened recently, and all of a sudden that song came on. And I just thought, oh, well, okay, I want to do, at first I was trying to figure out how to change that song. And then I realized, no, I just need to do it. And wait, the guy's a killer. I was going to have some other name or something else, but then I thought, no, the person's a killer. I mean, so let's call it what it is. And so I threw that together. And then what you have there is I do a lot of pop-up readings and other kinds of things, and I work with musicians. And so that's Tony Baca, and him and I will just try things. And so that was the first time I had written up some of that stuff. He didn't even know what I was going to say. He was playing, and we just kind of run with it. And that's kind of why we call it Do It Now, because it's, we're doing it then and now, or whatever it is. But that was, as Kurt goes back to what we were expressing. I mean, I think as artists, we get affected by what's happening. We're trying to learn from what happened in the past. And I'm feeling driven to say something.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to figure out how to say it in some way that I hope will affect people, that doesn't necessarily just come out as a rant. I know people want humor. This one I didn't quite figure out. I mean, there's some things it's hard to twist to bring humor into it. And so, but that's, kind of what but thanks for playing that. And it's weird. It's like every day now we're getting, we're shooting.
Yeah. There was one today. There was one yesterday.
I know. I mean, it's
like we're numb to it.
It's an epidemic of violence.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's interesting to me, that kind of the scenario in my mind as I listen to it, and I'm only giving my impression of it, is that, you're trying to have this dialogue with this person. And, I don't know, in my mind, like that's probably not going to work, but what else is there to do now? Right. And it's like this, what else can we do but try to use words, because nothing else is working. And it's this strange juxtaposition of ideas, this cognitive dissonance, but it's like, I think like we all feel like what else can be done? Well, right? Like you want to stop, you want a chance to like talk to somebody who might be in that place. So it's like really powerful to me on that level, like just imagining this scenario. And you mentioned Tony, who is playing too. Like there's something he is doing. I don't know what he is processing and what he's responding to that adds something to it.
Oh yeah, no, I'm very lucky to be connected with some of the really the best musicians in the Valley. On their own, they were nice enough when I've asked them. If you check out any of them, when you go to my the YouTubes and see the other players and Do It Now, if you were to look up each of them, you see they have whole careers and a whole bunch of stuff. And they're kind of moved into wanting their instruments to express emotions, express feelings. And they've done all the old, rock and roll, jazz, they've run the gamut. They like a lot of those things. And then they were kind of interested in this project. So they hear me and they go with what I'm bringing up. Sometimes when we've done shows, they would kind of say, is this more of a sad one? Is you want more seriousness? And sometimes I'll say, no, I don't know. Cause we've done some pieces 2 or 3 times, and it's very interesting the change when the music is different and they all work. And you realize, oh yeah, that emotion could be in many ways come out in terms of it could make you happy. This piece could have, with different music, might have had more uplifting that, oh, it worked. I talked to this person and they changed or they stopped or they felt heard. I don't know. But as you said, Jen, it's kind of like how to move from, if we're being numbed, that you run out of ideas of how do I get out of that numbness and what is that an action, without just screaming because you're so pissed off and you want to just yell at people saying they're stupid for doing whatever, call them names, and that's not going to work.
Yeah. Paul, does knowing or suspecting you might perform a piece with Do It Now or some other musicians or a subset of those folks, does that influence how you write the piece or conceive the piece? Or do you do that is that a separate process?
It's a separate thing. Because I'm always writing. And the reason they are into it is because they know I'm just going to call them when I have something. And sometimes they've been getting excited because we got, I think we only did 2 or 3 Do It Now performances, and Serious Play saw us. They're an organization, production company in Northampton, and they took us to the Edinburgh Festival. They thought suddenly, and so they said, I don't know who's doing this or what's going on. So it's kind of interesting in terms of that. But so it's kind of there. So they were just my pieces. They were things that I got affected by, I wrote, but it does change. just this is an example, even without the band. When I had one of my first books, I had a proof. I went to the Austin International Poetry Festival, and I went there particularly because you could hit a lot of stages in a very short period of time. And I think I must have hit like 14 mics. And so I had the new book, and I was trying the pieces, and I was trying a lot of the same ones and seeing the different audience reactions. Wow, they really laughed there. Well, how did I say that line differently that brought the laugh there? Or this brought people to really feel the piece in the end, or I ended it differently that brought this or that. So I was always working that. And sometimes I'd look at the piece and I'd realize from doing it on the stage, I didn't want to read what I wrote. It didn't work. There's a written page aspect that if you're reading it, it works. But when I'm trying to run it like I'm running now, when I get to that line, it's like, I'm not saying it that way. I got to say it a different way.
So do you have to improvise in that moment?
Yeah, I'm improvising then, knowing and seeing my thought. I'm improvising on my own. So I just want to say that I have that with myself. And then when I brought these musicians in, there was kind of sometimes they're just running and I'm running, and it naturally ends. And I'm like, wait, I have 2 more verses. And I would, and so in the beginning it was okay because we were live. I didn't go, wait a minute, guys. I just stopped. And when I got off the stage and talking to some people got what the last 2 verses were that I didn't do. And so I thought, oh, that's interesting. So the mood and the intent and the music got it. So it was like trust that I started trusting more. Whatever's going to happen, I've got the piece in front of me. The band's doing what it's doing. When they see, it's almost like they consider me another instrument. And if they see I'm coming in for another solo, then they let me do my solo and they back me. And then they either come back together and we all go out together, or we, whatever it might be. And so, I realize it's finding those musicians and having that work. And if you looked at some of those videos, those are all one-offs, and they look like we really rehearsed them all.
Yeah.
And so that's a great thing, a great statement to all the people involved and all the talent that's involved. And so,
yeah, I mean, it feels like jazz in a sense to me, right? It's risky. You're not really sure where it might go. It's not always rehearsed, and you're just putting it out there and see what happens. And
there's a great one. I have a pay-per-view channel. There's links from my website, and I was lucky enough to work with Avery Sharp, who is a bass player in the Valley, and he came up, and and I never met him. He never met me. He didn't know what I was going to do. He knew Tony, and we were in this theater going to film. So that show that's 30 minutes is what you see after we kind of did one. And he was like, oh, okay. He's done tons of stuff, and we just ran. And when I watched that show, those pieces, one of those pieces actually just won the flashcards just won the Miller Audio thing last month. So that was kind of interesting.
Oh, that's awesome. I'm going to give you one of these. Congratulations. Yeah.
Yeah. Now if the check just comes, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. That's an interesting question. I mean, so I'll just say as way of example, we don't do this for money, right? Like, and
Why not? Didn't your parents talk to you about what you should be doing? Where's the tip jar? Come on.
They did, but I have
something. Kofi. I mean, what the hell?
I have a rebellious streak. I didn't listen. You're returning
bottles then, basically. What are you doing?
Yeah.
Well, we do have a donation button on our website. I will just say that.
Yeah.
So we do have a tip jar of sorts. It's a digital tip jar.
Yeah, but
good.
We don't ever, we don't really, we're not
sponsored. We don't sell advertising space.
We didn't.
It's a labor of love.
Yeah,
is what I think you're trying to say.
Yeah, but it gives you more freedom too.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And we wanted to. We wanted to showcase the types of people, we were interested in. And so I guess what I'm saying is, like, what drives you here? What motivates you? What's behind your desire to create and get out there and perform?
Sandwiches.
Free food, that always gets everybody.
Sandwiches. As long as there's sandwiches, we can handle it. Well, I mean, so just a little bit of a history.
Yeah.
I mean, I because in terms of money and which directions I went and how I went to try to get sandwiches. I taught for about 7 years, and then I became a professional juggler, which was first I actually worked at a worker-run warehouse, and I practiced in the warehouse, and then I became I juggled for my own mental stuff, because what it did with right hand, left hand, would have changed my brain. It's a whole podcast in itself. But in doing that juggling, at one point I made the step of, okay, I'm going to do this, get jobs, which changed it from, what I was doing to, they want me to do this thing at a, VFW. They want me to do this thing at a big fair. They want me to do this thing at a corporate event. All those things are kind of any art form. Where are you selling the art form, and when do you feel like you've sold yourself, and how much of a prostitute are you being? And we're all prostitutes. And okay, well, as long as I don't have to wear certain, costumes and there's lubrication, I'm okay. Or, it's like, right. I don't know, and so there's that whole aspect. But that actually helped me with my writing, that I realized writers didn't have from that history, because writers come to writing and they're in a room and they're kind of by themselves, and like maybe with yourselves, you have other jobs. And so those other jobs are taking care of the sandwiches, and you're kind of doing your thing, but to promote it, you're kind of almost waiting. I mean, the artist mythology in the past was that you're writing and suddenly someone knocks on your door and goes, "Oh, we love your writing and we're going to publish your books and you're going to be famous." And oh my God. And so somehow that mythology is out there. And so people don't do much to promote themselves, or a lot of people do realize to promote themselves, but a lot of people don't. When I've been to festivals, I went to those festivals, like that was being a juggler. I was on computers early, Googling event, who has craft fairs in New England, who does where I could be performing, who has small theaters. So when I decided I was going to go full time with my writing, I started just saying, well, where are there word festivals? Are there poetry festivals? What's going on? And then I wanted to take myself to those places, because I thought, okay, my friends are being real nice. I read at these events and they tell me they like it, but what about nobody knows me? Is anybody going to give me the time of day? Right. And so that's why I started going to Austin, and I went to places all over the country. And when I went, to Europe, and it just was on stages to go, okay, people are coming up to me asking me if I have a book. Okay, so that prompted me to publish, and then prompted me like, oh, everyone's rejecting me, and I'm getting the same story from all these other people I'm seeing coming off the stage, who people are asking for books. They've been rejected. So this kind of leads into why I started Human Error Publishing, is because I just thought, I'm doing this. I'm not going to wait around for someone to publish me, because I'm going to go to festivals, and if I have a book, people are buying it. So I had that initial, maybe it's because I'm an old dude. I came out of the 60s and 70s, and we weren't special, but the time had energy, and it's different in wording. People were saying to you, what's happening? And it meant, what are you making happen? Are you looking for something to happen? Are you going somewhere to happen? Me being motivated, I'm going to be a part of it. When you move to whatever, right, then you're moving to a thing that you're assuming it's not going to happen. You're going to let me know whatever goes. I guess I'm going to accept whatever comes my way, because I'm not making it happen the way I want. And then it's kind of everything is good. And it's like, well, then everything isn't good. So I'm watching the phrases over the years and seeing a change in consciousness. And when I do workshops with younger folks about asking me, oh, I would like to do a festival. How do you do a festival? They're always asking me about all the professionals I consulted. And I'm kind of like, no, I put up a sign on the first one. I contacted some people and I got 33 people, and I realized I hit a nerve. Yeah. If I would have had 5 people, I would have thought, okay, maybe nobody else wants this. Maybe I'll still do it because I want it. This goes back to another question that you're talking to me about, is there aren't venues for what I want to do. So when you think about it, it's bars and let's get drunk and let's do this reggae. It's this. No, we're not going to have, unless you're doing original. No, we want to hear originals. Are you a cover band for one of the better bands? Blah, blah, blah. So I was motivated once I found other people to realize I have to create my own venues. And I'm going to see if anybody comes and everybody likes it. So I could say, well, there's a success. I've been doing this big festival, a 4-day festival, which I'll announce now is always in October. It's called the Great Falls Word Festival. It'll be the 6th through the 9th this year. And it's 4 days in a theater. Usually over 170 writers sign up to be a part of the 4 days. And there's a crowd, and I have a stage to do it now on and do all kinds of things, and people show up. So there's that. One other one that's happening in October and just sort of related to the thing, I wanted to move words, or what you might call, into more mainstream. So I worked on this Garlic and Arts Festival. They're friends for many years, talking to them about, they have other stages. Can't I have a word stage? Who will go? What is it?
Was that a hard sell for them?
Yeah. I mean, even when I first started to do my first festival, I would go to restaurants or I'd go to places that had rooms that I was going to rent the banquet room. Okay. And I'd go in, the manager's there, and I say, hey, you have these dates open. Yep. Okay. So what are you going to do? I'm going to have at first I was saying poetry festival or writers festival. And they go, oh, great. Okay. You can have those 2 tables over there. I'm like, no. I don't want the 2 tables. I want to rent the room for this event. Who's going to come? I said, well, does it matter to you? I'm paying. That's what I'm asking you. How much money do you want? Yeah. How much money do you want? Here's the money. Let's see if it happens. Okay. So it was always, think about it. When you say poetry, most people aren't saying I'm going to a poetry event. Nobody's saying I'm buying poetry books. Nobody's, and some of the writers that they might like, they may consider differently, or short stories. I have hope because of, the storytelling that's on the radios now, the 5-minute stories, this or that people want real statements. They're tired of all the kind of fluff, or that there's nothing being said. So I could go on that, but go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. Is part of this conception of poetry as being boring that we don't read it enough in spaces, or is it something else, Paul? What's going on here?
Let's just be clear that Leave No Child Left Behind left a lot of kids behind, and destroyed you liking learning, and whatever kind of learning, and that somehow learning only happens in school. And so, and at the classics, and I read, this particular poem. Oh no, you didn't interpret it right. What are you talking about? However I read Pound or anybody else, if I thought it was boring, it should have been okay for me to say this was boring, or didn't say anything to me. To start trusting, do I know when something says something to me? And finding those writers. We all know, if anybody reads, that you find a book and you go, man, you just zip through that book.
Yeah.
That was just a great story, whatever they say, And other books you go, I can't. That happened with me with On the Road, which is very funny. I got this Beat, awards. The first time I picked up On the Road, it was like I couldn't read it. I didn't get it. It wasn't reading. And it was about a year or two later, I picked it up again, and all of a sudden I read it all in one day. And I thought, okay, so what happened?
Yeah,
that my mind changed, that I was open to it this time or something,
Yeah, and I think maybe I asked I didn't frame my question right. Is it that we don't perform poetry versus even ask people to read it in schools? Like, is it?
It's not part of the regular.
Yeah,
you're not going to Netflix to look for poets necessarily.
Yeah, I guess. Do you think more people would be interested in poetry and be more proactive in seeking it out if we had more people, more venues, more people like yourself out there reading it and performing it and giving some life to the words on the page? Like, I've tried to read Shakespeare's plays, and God bless them, they are masterfully written and crafted. But I fall asleep after 15 minutes. But to see them performed is just something completely different, right?
Well, it's interesting. So we met in a poetry group in college.
We did.
Just full disclosure.
Were you both writers?
Yeah, we both wrote. But for me personally, right? It was like a thing I did in high school and somewhat in college, and then I don't anymore, right? I don't feel that drive or that I don't have those whatever those emotions were that I felt like I needed to write out. And I know that a lot of kids in high school, they use it as an outlet, right? You can't go to a bar. So what do? You go to a coffee shop, a coffee house, and go to an open mic. And so, and there's a lot of poetry in the youths. But I think when you're older, there's not as much, I wonder if it's a byproduct of getting older too. I'm not sure.
It's kind of interesting about whether or not these headings. So to me, that's why I said a spoken word artist. To me, it's really interesting to go to, and people say this about my festivals, how diverse they are. Once I said this is about words, you had somebody who came up who did prose. You had, nobody, because you have camps, unfortunately. Oh, you didn't rhyme anything in that poem, so it's not a poem. Oh, you're not using couplets, or you're not, that's just stream of consciousness. Oh, no. And it's all these, our society is so much into dissecting and separating out that suddenly you almost need this big umbrella instead to say, okay, we're talking about words. And all these people are under this umbrella of words, and you're going to hear a story now. You're going to hear a rant. You're going to hear something that sounds like a song. And I think what I'm more interested, if I was going to say, to take out the numbness and to take out that you can actually make things happen, is what happens when you're affected by someone's telling of their own event. That I was down and out and I did this or I was really dumb and, can you believe it? I put that in the, machine, I lost it. And so everybody in the room who's ever done that goes, yeah, I know what that is. And somehow that sometimes can be healing or motivating, or you suddenly and then you see that someone's moved on. And, we don't have that much encouragement that way in our society. We're kind of it's always being acted like you're the screw up. It's your fault that you're failing, not a system that doesn't have any jobs. There's no welfare. There's no health care. There's no, all of that. So I'm more interested in wanting it to come back, that people enjoy coming into a room and hearing different people's ways of interpreting what they're experiencing. And it might be called a poem, it might be called a story, it might be called something, to give it more free flow.
Yeah, and I'm still hung up on what you told us about how people greeted each other in the way back when, what's happening versus now people, 10, 15 years ago when I was in the workplace, the catchphrase of the day was "It is what it is," which is equivalent to whatever, right? And what I love about what's happening is it's an activating statement, right? And I think you spoke to that, and I think we need to start what's happening again, or something,
or some version of it. It is what it is. That's a real interesting one, because it's almost like, don't start talking to me about how fuck this workplace is,
right?
We can't change it. Okay, so this is what it is. Let's not complain anymore. Let's pump out the widgets, do your part. So you're almost put down for wanting to say, I'd like to turn off the machinery, or whatever it is that's going on. Or talk about it. Or, the big thing is, I think, realizing that people get discouraged because you could talk about it and there's no present answer at the moment. And so then you think there isn't an answer. And sometimes there is an answer now, but at least we have clarity that we both see that A and B and 1 and 1 is 2 and 2 and 2 is 4. And it's not a Rush Limbaugh. We're in a culture that went from 1 and 1 is 2, 2 and 2 is 4, and 4 and 8 is 75. And that means it's Muslims, or it's women, or it's the gays, and you go, wait a minute. How did that math, how did you take us there?
Yeah.
And so it's scary because we're not in dialogues anymore. And it's hard to get anybody to say, okay, 1 and 1 is 2 and 2 and 2 is 4. And we both come to 4. or, you know, you need the vaccine or you don't need the vaccine, or, you know, I mean, that's where it makes it really hard to say everybody wants to go to, it is what it is. Just, you know, I gotta go do other things now, you know?
Yeah. Well, the critical thinking skills
are
lacking.
And, you know, the introduction of the concept of alternative facts, you know, with the Trump administration, right? This idea that there's a congruent, equally valid truth, like, you know, and they try to use that, you know, to deprive people of human rights, right? Like, it's crazy.
I wrote this piece because I thought, you know, I was brought up with George Washington who chopped down the cherry tree, and he couldn't lie. I thought, well, okay, so he said he did it, but he did destroy nature. Okay, so he was the first one that started destroying nature, but he couldn't lie about it. Now we have everybody they're willing to lie and say, there was never a tree there. Okay, then you point out the evidence that there was a tree there. Oh, right. Maybe the wind knocked it down.
Oh my God.
And I just ran that because it was kind of like we've moved. And wait a minute, I was brought up as a little kid to say a good leader doesn't lie.
That's so interesting. I forgot about that.
Yeah. So Paul, we were going before we talked, and kind of like some of our correspondences prior to getting here, talking today, we were going back and forth about what pieces I wanted to play.
Oh, yeah, go ahead. Yep.
On the show today, and you know, I was combing through the list of videos, and you had some, you know, longer pieces on there. Some of them, you know, 10, 20 minutes long, some shorter, and I picked some shorter ones that, you know, kind of at random that I found. I picked some shorter ones that I found interesting, and then we had this little exchange about, you know, you had mentioned that people were interested in asking about shorter pieces of work, and you had some thoughts to share about that. So I was just curious what you wanted to tell us about that.
Well, in terms of listening, I mean, I wonder about it because, you know, I watch the analytics. You know, I'm putting up a YouTube channel, and so the YouTube tells you have a 2-minute video, and everyone's cutting out at 1:16. Okay, so was it a bad piece? People just they feel like they got it. They liked it, so you get the thumbs up. So, okay, so the 1:13 they liked. They liked it enough to comment. Okay, did they share it? I mean, is this what the world is about? I mean, for me, even as a juggler, it's like all artists are in this place of, did you get a stamp? Did someone give you your, you know, MFA? So now you're real. I mean, one time when I was juggling, I was trying to get into ski resorts. There was a really big one called Stratton Mountain. And when I scored Stratton Mountain, all of a sudden all the other ski resorts were like, oh, you can work for us. You know, before they didn't want to talk to me. So with the writing, it's similar almost. I want to write what I want to write. Some pieces are short. Some pieces with a band, because the band again takes off. The piece is 2 pages. The band turns it into 5 minutes.
Right.
Or the band turns it into 8 minutes, and it seems to be what it means. In a live performance, it seems fine. People have really shown that they like it. In our world of, do I have enough time, and I'm scrolling on the phone, and maybe I'm in between lunch, or I walked out of a meeting. Oh, no, I'm not actually watching your movie. I just was scrolling and it started. So one of the media said people watched it when they didn't. Facebook has that notorious thing where they give you lots of hits so that you buy ads, I guess. And so because it started, where YouTube will sometimes say, no, they had to watch it for 10 seconds before we say that they started watching it. And but it makes me, there's a part of it, is it because of I want to be known, or my books sell, or what we were just talking about? We both were concerned about the shootings. So did I go too long that people got the message? Was because I want the message to be heard. Mm-hmm. I want us to all act on the message. Not that I think I have the right ideas. But I want us to figure out how to stop climate change. I know there's a lot of information how. we should have been doing it. We are doing, I mean, there are people have been doing it, but we're still losing in the sense of we're not getting, the government to respond or the corporations to respond. So that's kind of connected to as a performer, when I would get up and I'm juggling on a stage and the directors I worked with, if you're really watching the audience, you're doing something, I'm losing them. Okay, I got to do something else. Okay, they're with me. They're not with me. Okay, and some people will say to me, "Oh, this was an interesting aspect." So I went one time to a reading. A woman had all her pieces memorized. 3 of them bombed. And when I went backstage to see her, and I was talking to her a little bit, I said, and she said, "Yeah, this was not the right audience to do those." I said, "Well, why didn't you stop after the first one?" And she said, "Well, this is all I have memorized."
Huh.
And I said, "What's wrong with reading? Like it's taboo to have the book in front of you." And so like what we're talking about, there's so many genres of, because sometimes maybe somebody went to a reading where someone was holding a book and it was boring to them, instead of someone might be very lively reading a book. Oh no, you have to be like, the slams where you haven't memorized, and no, it can only be 3 minutes. And, so you get into all these genres, and then we're trying to go back to, what did they say? Was it meaningful? Did it move you to action? Did it move you to do something yourself, to be creative? Did it give you more inspiration to keep doing podcasts? Or did you suddenly go, screw this, we can do something else with this time,
Yeah. I mean, it's an interesting question. I think for us, I think if we were here in person and sitting down and talking, I could see us, talking 2-3 hours probably, right? Because you have that in-person, like live energy, then you could feed off each other. And also for us, like, because we record these kind of later in the evening, once you start getting beyond it, an hour and a half, 2 hours, you're talking about people's bedtimes. So like, for us as the creators and the medium, so the medium in which we do this impacts how we create and deliver the art out to people.
I have 2 thoughts. So like the internet or just people's attention spans for things are so short, right?
Yeah.
It's like clips, pictures, like things like that. They grab your attention, you move on, right? So if you have a recorded thing, sometimes people have, and then, like you said, like they get it and then they move on, right? So like, oh, I liked it, and then it has to like really like, impact them in order for them to watch the whole thing, right? Like I do that even with like artists I like musicians or whatever. Like I'll be like, oh, I want to listen to this one song, and I'll listen, and then I'll be like, all right, I've heard the song before. I don't need to listen to this live version that I've heard like a couple of times, unless I like really am into it, right? So,
yeah.
But then the other thing that I wanted to say was like, you were talking about like when you're live with an audience and you're course correcting while you're reacting to the audience, you don't have that with the internet. You're just putting content out. There's no back and forth dialogue between the audience.
Right.
And
I don't know. I mean, sometimes I joke and I say, I'm just an old guy. I don't get it. TikTok, watching, okay, so this is the new thing. We have a minute. Okay, I'm willing to play that game. I have a minute. I tried a couple of them for a minute because they're all games. And to me, and so it's like, okay, I'll do a minute. Let's all try a minute and see who we like. Do what minute you do. So then I see some of these and I think, why 7 million hits?
Right.
They're not doing anything. This isn't happening. Anything's not happening. And it kind of reminded me, we got into some stuff with some street folks one time, or when I was out performing in the street, people were saying, oh, you're getting money. I said, well, I'm giving them something. You're just standing here asking for money. Tell jokes. I don't know, do something. So that if you're asking for money, people will say, okay, you gave me something. And so there's this little thing of that. So right now it's kind of almost discouraging because I'm thinking, wait, the highest number things are people that aren't giving me anything. Not that that's what I should, that sounds weird because like, oh, you're not going to give anything unless you get something. No, I'm here, but this happened actually in the juggling world. There was and I'm not sure if it's the attitudes of the world. A bunch of us older jugglers, and this is 20 years ago, were there, and the younger juggler was on stage, and he kept acting like, I don't care that you're here.
Huh.
And at one point, one of the jugglers said, well, let's leave. And I said, why? And she said, well, they're really dissing us out here. And they're acting like they keep saying they don't care we're here. So let's leave. And he said, and so we did get up and we walked out, and he didn't seem to care. And we got outside and we said, well, what do you think about all that? And one guy said, hey, I feel like I'm the old tradition of the minstrels who came through towns. And people wanted to hear the news. They wanted to hear things from me. And I was looking for housing and food. And I gave them something. Yeah. I'm seeing it as a sacred moment that you're willing to be listening to me. Or I got your attention. And so now I'm not going to waste it that I have your attention. I'm going to try to feel like you go, oh, I'm really glad I interacted with you for this little bit. Or like you said, we start talking. And isn't that a great thing that we suddenly look up and go, oh man, it's 11 o'clock. We've been just hanging out here, just chatting away. That's great fun,
Yeah.
That's what I'm talking about. And so I would hope I want to be inspired. I mean, when I see other artists or something, I'm like, wow, I'm so glad that was great use, timing, the music, whatever they did. I just don't understand. And so I look for answers because I don't really understand some of the influencers or things that they're talking about. And I don't know if you have this experience, but you go, why?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Because you're young, you're 18 and you're a woman or this, or I'm not sure what that was,
Yeah. The thing that strikes me about a lot of what is popular on social media and is how cruel a lot of it is. It's like cruel. Yeah. Like a lot of the things that I see in videos and like TikToks and are these like incredibly cruel and destructive pranks, like, and like just people, I don't know, there's a currency in cruelty now. And that's kind of what I see. And the thing I find, distasteful in some ways. And like, I was thinking about what Stomping Jen, what you were saying before about, listening, like I love cover versions of songs, right? Like my favorite song of all time is probably Pink Floyd's Wish You Were Here. And I seek out cover versions of that song to see how people interpret it, to see how do they sing that chorus in the middle differently when they go, how I wish you were here. Like, right. Like, and like even a slight
that's Brad. That's something that most people don't want to actually hear.
Yeah, I love
it.
If
we keep this to writing and what people like. So think about it. The people who like Pink Floyd will beat up the other bands who don't sound exactly like them.
Yeah.
And then there's people who want to go see a band that says, I'm not Led Zeppelin. I'm not going to be Robert Plant, but I'm going to give you my interpretation of that song. Or I'm going to give you my interpretation of Pink Floyd. And there's only two of us up here. We're going to create the whole band.
Right.
And this is what we're doing. And you go, wow, I love that song. And that's a new, I really love that interpretation. I wasn't expecting them to sound like Pink Floyd, which is a different is a different way of coming at arts in some ways, what we're talking about.
Yeah. And do you, so when do you have pieces that you perform, repeatedly, like in different spaces?
We haven't. Well, the only time I did that when I was in Edinburgh, because those folks got us 12 shows.
Okay.
And they wanted us to do this particular set. And we noticed, though, the set changed and there were some similarities. We had some time refrains to end in an hour. So it was kind of interesting as a game, an exercise of can we get these in and how to do that. That somewhat seemed, though some audience members came different nights and they said, wow, that was great because it was totally different each night, even though I loved, you still did the piece about this, you still did the piece about that. So that was interesting. If I can, I just wanted to comment on something about the cruelty. I'm glad you said that. Yeah. So in the history of vaudeville, there were the times when all the acts were slapping each other. So
like
if you think about this, Punch and Judy, the Three Stooges, the if you go and see old footage of even acrobats, they're doing these amazing handstands, jumping off, doing things, but then suddenly one guy will slap another guy and knock him to the ground. He'll do something acrobatic with it, and the crowd loves it. And at one point I thought, you know what? This is a time period when a lot of people were getting slapped. And it was acceptable to slap. It was the honeymooners, you're going to the moon. The guy's going to punch her. And so because that's accepted, you're now laughing and getting off on someone else's getting it, not you.
Yeah.
And so now, in a way, we're not really dealing with how much trauma there is and how much trauma people have gone through. So it makes sense in a way that you would say anybody expressing something would be the cruelty that they've maybe experienced. And this is the only way they're getting it out. And some people put down poetry in high schools because the people who were in those clubs, when you listen to some of the tapes, people says, oh, so is everyone being sexually abused? Is everyone coming out? Is everyone? It's like, well, these are all the voices that were never heard. And they're not on the basketball team. And they're not in the junior league. And they're not on the honor society. And so now you have a new club that they can be in. And they're expressing, yes, their stepfather is a jerk. And he's starting to think about raping him. And this is fear. And this is, the world. And yes, it's going on. And no, not every high school girl is going through it, but some version because of the society. So, I think the culture, and it's tough to try to figure out what to do about that as a performer. Do you go with cruelty because the audience wants it? Or do you try to say something else that's showing you understand the cruelty and you're presenting something else as a way out again? Like I said,
Yeah.
And then as an artist, I have to also just, because Jen, you said it, you have to have the motivation of an emotion that triggers you to want to write it or paint it or play the song for it. So I whatever happens that I have, like I just wrote this piece on culture because I was with a lot of folks of color and they were talking about how their cultures were totally, destroyed. And I suddenly hit me like, oh, I need to restate, and not as comparison or than anything or who's more oppressed, but I lost my cultures at the immigration. Names were changed, languages were lost. People were not considered Polish. You're not Jewish. You're not Catholic. You're an American. All that kind of stuff. What does that mean? And all that history lost, all that cultural loss,
Yeah. How do you see that relationship between the creator and artist, and particularly performers and the fans? Like, how do you?
Well, I come at it. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I'm assuming there are people who are fans of your work and come to the festivals to see you and interact with you. And is that a relationship that you have to navigate in some ways? And how do you approach that?
I think I'm a little, just to be clear, and it's not to say anything in terms of myself. I come from a couple of different areas. I'm an activist.
Yep. I've
been an activist for a really long time. I fought against the Vietnam War. I didn't fight. I didn't go to Vietnam. I fought against going. That's a whole story in itself. I helped Vietnam vets who were on the streets, who lost it because of being there, even though I didn't go. So the myth about, quote, hippies spitting on veterans, that wasn't the case in a lot of places. These were our friends or brothers or people coming back that we helped. So that act, and it goes on from there, and anti-nuclear, all these things. So there's an activist part to me. There's an artist part to me. And then so that artist part has many different forms. I used to do collages. Even when I juggled, I wasn't doing straight juggling jokes. I was using juggling as a metaphor that I would drop and say, that's the first trick I hope everyone learns, is the drop. And most people don't want to learn the second trick, which is picking it up. And so you're stopping at the drop because you think that shows I'm not a juggler. No, to be a juggler is you have to pick up and keep doing it. And so I had, even with the juggling wasn't, like in terms of those, because there were those in each art form. There's always the people who smash the pie in their face or whatever they're doing in their juggling act because the audience wants to see that. And did people want to hear my stories or my raps around my juggling that I was using? So now that I'm supposedly a writer, and then again, I remember Laurie Anderson talking about this when she first put out one of her albums. They were like, so we're having a hard time where the album should go in the bin. Are you the experimental musician? Are you the storyteller? And they list this whole thing, and she goes, well, yeah, I'm all of those. No. You got to go in one of the bins. And so I don't think we've ever gotten out of that, though it seems weird because when TV came in and they said suddenly there's going to be more than 3 channels and you're going to have 400 channels, there was a sense that, you could have a poetry channel or you could have a feminist channel that people could go and talk to, and because before they wouldn't let that be on the air, but now there's so many channels, we don't care if there's an audience to go see that channel, go for it. If it sells something, Yeah. So I'm kind of in that place of, and to answer your question is, okay, I want to reach more and more audiences. So the people that I know will come up to me after my festivals and go, I'm so, sometimes I'll say, geez, I'm sorry, I was dark, I think, or, I have a feeling all of a sudden that maybe I was too dark, or no, I'm so glad you said all those things. We need somebody saying them. We need it to be in the open. Thank you for saying them. Does that get me into the other clubs or stuff? So do I modify that? And again, I think every artist is being asked, are you compromising and you're going to make your thing more pop or more something that, I'm sure you're thinking about it in terms of podcasts. If you're serious about it, you might listen to, what somebody considers a top 5 podcasts. Why are they top 5 podcasts? Oh, they have music in there. They have this. So should I put music in? Do they do this? They're only a half hour. So it comes out of your own motivation. Like you said, you want to do it because you want to do it. And you want to talk to people and you feel like you want this stuff to come out. So
yeah,
maybe you're just going with whoever goes with you. And that's kind of where I am a little bit. I'm trying to go with, at the same time, I want to be doing shows.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like podcasts have undergone a huge evolution in the last 10 years. When they started, everyone was an indie, right? Now there are huge corporate juggernauts of podcasting, right? Like, you find those on Spotify and other platforms. You have to pay to get them. And now there's like this, the pendulum is swinging back to who are the real indie podcasts? Like, who are the people who are out there still doing it for the love of doing it, right? And so the question is like, what are the real top 5, right? They're like the top 5 corporate sponsored podcasts that you now find, right? And the ones that the money is behind. You have a guy like Joe Rogan getting, $150 million or whatever he's getting, to do his. He started out as he was the original indie podcaster, right? But now he isn't, and now there are other. It's interesting. Like,
and now everybody thinks that maybe I could be that him and start to do podcasts.
Yeah.
It's tricky because, again, Jen, I think you hit it on too, and you're hitting the sense of where's your passion. So when people ask about being an artist, and somebody will say to me, well, especially when they were asking about the festival, then sometimes I'd say to people, do you have a passion about weaving? You want to do a weaving festival? Because if you don't have the passion for it, this is all going to seem like a lot of work. Yeah. And you're going to be thinking, when am I going to get the bone? Where's the carrot at the end of this? And well, maybe there isn't a carrot. The carrot is you doing it. And because you love to do it and you want to be doing it. And it gets me to Edinburgh. Okay, I would have never thought I'd go to Edinburgh. And it gets me to go to Senegal. Okay, wow, I've never been to Africa. And really? I can actually perform at that festival in Senegal? Oh, wow. Okay, thank you. And, things happen and you making them happen. And I'm doing everything. It's not like I wasn't practicing and working on it. And were there big audiences? No. Then all of a sudden somebody, that happened to me sometimes with my juggling. We do a showcase and the people before you had 300 people in the room, and suddenly your spot in the showcase is maybe after lunch or before lunch, and most people left and it was 7 people in the room, and you go, oh man, and then we'd learn sometimes all we needed was those 7 people because 4 of them were bookers for like 50 shows each or something.
Right. Those are the right people.
And the room that had 230 were single shows. And in the end, you'd find out they got 15 of them or something, and you go, oh, okay. You don't, what you're looking for. for approval or for acknowledgement, or, I joked about, I do like eating. So yes, if there are sandwiches or enough to give me sandwiches, I'm not looking for, 5 cars and 3 houses, and I'm happy with 1 house and a car that works, and things like that,
Yeah. I'm recalling an image on your website, which I really enjoyed perusing through and looking at, and I would encourage people to do that. Just remember the links are in the show notes. Go check those out. You have a picture of 3 people sitting in an auditorium on your website, right? And with a caption that says, "When you look up after you have delivered one of your best pieces," and you can tell you're just killing the audience. Was that based on a real experience? Like, was that?
Well, I mean, yes and no. So was in Austin, Texas.
Yeah.
The 4 of us actually had gotten there a little early before it was starting, and that was a big theater. And I was sitting there and I looked around and I thought, oh, I had the flash. So I went up to the mic, turned around, took out my phone. One person was reading, the 2 people looked at me, and I took the picture. And have you ever been in a circumstance where you feel like I just nailed it? Like, this was one of my best performances ever. And there was just a couple of people there, and that has happened. I mean, I had also the opposite. Like, the first couple times with Do It Now, it's so engrossing to be conscious about what I'm trying to say, listen to the other musicians, everybody's listening, be watching, that when I came off and I saw the reaction, I really wanted to look at the video, because I thought to myself, what the hell did we do? Because there's people crying and there's people hugging me and there's people saying, I can't believe you did that. And I was like, what did we do?
Yeah.
So there's that part.
Yeah.
And then there's the part of, I've been in rooms and, this is the piece, and boom, and it's dead. And you go, okay, so that's not the piece, I guess. Or it's, I'll tell people, because they say, oh, what do you? I said, listen, you can just here's the graph. You're up there, and they go, and you go, yeah, they're being nice. They didn't tell you. Thank you for that. Get off. Or they're, you got to understand. I mean, you can ask for it, but you're not going to get it unless you give it.
Are you able to just chalk that up like to, those are the people who were there at that time, that was my delivery at that time? Or do you go back and do you watch videos of your performances and try to deconstruct, kind of like, okay, I should have put more emphasis on this phrase?
All of it, actually.
Yeah.
I was brought up with the director who encouraged that I shouldn't just be taking his eye. We videoed things, and you'd watch it and you'd realize, oh, my right hand is doing all these things. Why am I doing that? Put it down. I don't, it's my nervousness. Oh, let's watch a video where I don't do that. Oh, wow. I can see the audience is being much more concentrated. They're really listening to me. I'm not distracting them. So you learn things about yourself in that. I also, one time we performed, I was in a 4-man troupe one time, and we performed at this place where we had like 10 shows in a row, various times during the day. Sometimes we're getting standing ovations. Sometimes they're just kind of walking out, and it was the same show. And we were doing it pretty much. And yes, there are times when you're not quite on, but we also realized it's audience. Those people were hungry. They came in to kind of see the show. They saw they wanted to leave. They wanted to go eat. The other people came in. They had been full. They were ready for a show. They wanted to laugh. They were ready to go. Bam. We had what they needed to do it, and they went, and it went.
Yeah.
And so that goes back to the aspect where some people say that to me, and I'll say, well, and when I mentioned the story about the woman reading, I bring my work with me, and I almost don't know until I'm hitting the stage what I'm going to read, because I'm watching the other people before me. If I'm first, then I'm going to try a couple things or I look at the people around. But if I have a little ways in, I'm looking and saying, short ones are working here. This is a crowd that wants short ones. This is a crowd that wants to do whatever it is. And then that's when I'm pulling out my work and saying, okay, I have something for that. Or or they seem to be in cats today. Okay, I've got 3 cat pieces. If they want cats, I can give them cats.
Yeah. Hearing you talk, and I know this might just be performing, but I'm hearing a lot of parallels to the craft of stand-up comedy. And also on your website, somebody compared some of your work to that of, the best stand-up comics. And, I did a little stand-up myself on the open mic circuit 10 years or so ago. And like a lot of what you're saying resonates to me, in terms of, preparing and going with the crowd. And sometimes there's just 2 people in the room and you get up and you still do your thing, right? And you try to learn from something from it. But I wanted to ask you about humor, like how important, because, I'm sensing you're somebody who tries to find humor in things. And I'm just wanting you to talk to us a little about what humor means to you and how you approach it and think about it in your work and maybe even in your personal life.
Well, there's a long history or tradition. The Native Americans talked about their clowns. I mean, becoming a juggler and thinking about vaudeville and clowning took me into the history of a lot of different things about what was funny or not funny or what people wanted to see. And was it because they were being slapped and all that stuff that I mentioned? One of the things that I read in terms of Native American stuff was that they expressed that they might even shit on something that's the most sacred because they wanted to, if you were laughing, you could take in the information. That was the sense. If you're depressed and crying, you're probably not hearing what's being said. I've had people say to me, I got home and you know what? I'm not sure why I laughed. I really laughed at your show, but you weren't talking about funny things. And so there's part of me, laughter, I think I love laughter myself. I think laughter gives hope. I think laughter brings something. And I didn't want to do comedy clubs. And yes, this piece that just won the Miller Audio was in poetry and humor, and they threw it out of poetry and they gave me the humor award. So they were really, and everybody was saying, see, I told you should do stand-up. But I didn't really like the stand-up clubs. I wasn't doing the Take My Wife or, some line of old comics, and I wasn't doing one-liners, and I wasn't doing tits and ass, and I wasn't doing all the stuff that you go, okay, I'm not, and I'm not trying to, and they were competitive. That's why I said I didn't like slams.
Right.
I was looking for an audience and what I've done in my own festivals, and a lot of people comment on it, and it's gotten me on other shows where a lot of open mics and people have events said we hadn't thought about. There were always hassling with people trying to get them off the mic. I put sand timers into my events. So there's 2 sand timers. When you go up, you flip over the sand timer. One has 5 minutes, one has 3 minutes, depending on what we're doing. The 5 minutes is black. When the black sand is gone, you're gone. No, I have 2 more pages. No, there's no more. You don't have 2 more pages. I only have another paragraph. No, your sand is gone. And it was to do a couple of things. It was to respect that we're trying to get these many people in the hour, and you taking up the time, we can't get those people in. It's not all about you. 2, I wanted people in the audience to relax because people get worried that how are we going to get rid of this person when you don't like them?
Yeah, they're going to be gone. Yeah.
And they're going to go on, and I'm already getting out of my chair. I'm leaving the club.
Well, I was going to ask you, why a sand timer, not some other kind of digital timer that the performer can see?
Because nobody can argue against. When I used to try to do a clock, I looked at my watch. You started your blah, 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 blah. No.
Yeah.
The sand timer is there for everybody to see. And everybody
right.
sees the black sand's gone. And the whole audience then says,
you're done.
You're gone.
Yeah,
you're
right.
done.
They can see the end. They could see the end, like you said.
They see the end.
Yeah.
And people have said, I didn't like that person, but about midway, those 3 lines were excellent.
I love that. And there's some kind of, in performing, there's a metaphor about dying, right? About dying on stage, and the the sand timer also has its metaphorical links to life and death. I love that.
Well, I back to what I said. I was kind of saying to people, for these events, we're playing this game where you're using 5 minutes, but I'm not going to do it like slams where everyone has to sound the same. Everyone has to be in the same cadence. You have to use the whole 5 minutes. If you only use a minute, that's why there's 2. You go up when you flip over the timer. You only use a minute and a half. Great. You just let yours run. The next person comes up. They have another timer to flip. By the time they're done, the other timer is good for the next person. And so some people want to read to the last grain. And I get it because nobody's being heard. So some of these readings are really, it's an amazing drug. And you must know from doing a little bit of stand-up.
Oh, yeah.
The audience loving you is an amazing drug.
Oh, it's one of the most wonderful things in the world when you
and you don't want to get off.
No.
And you don't want to get off, Yeah. And so you have to go, no. You have to, otherwise you're going to kill it now. You have to get off,
Yeah, I mean, I was obsessive about it, though. I knew with the venues I was going to, how much time I would have, and I would try to craft my set so I could get it right in the 5 minutes. It's usually always 5 minutes. And
and that's something in itself that people don't realize, that you do that for a while and you can say a lot in 3 minutes. You can say a lot in 5 minutes. I mean, it's funny. I was talking to someone today and they said they found this pool hall that, but most people don't go to pool halls anymore, but he found the pool hall and he said it was interesting because it was a whole place of people who wanted to improve their pool skills. And he didn't go there to shoot pool, to play games, 9-ball, 8-ball, straight. He just shot, what do you call them? They were like exercises. So the one exercise was to put the cue ball in place, hit it in the middle, that it hits, goes all the way to the end of the table, bounces off that bunker, but comes right back to where you are and hits the cue in the middle. And he said, when somebody told him to do that, he said, oh, okay. And then he was there like for 15, 20 minutes and it wasn't happening. And he realized, why is this not? And then he started practicing it and realized, oh, yeah, all these things are skills that, like somebody would say, oh, I want to do 3 balls juggling. And they'd pick up 3 balls and I'd be like, can you throw 1 ball from one hand to the other? Can I see you do that? Oh, you just threw it across the room. So you can't even catch 1 ball in your other hand.
Yeah.
So there's no reason to start with 3. And you're not bad. Nothing's wrong with you. This is what I think when we were talking about before is missing. If you say, oh, I want to be a spoken word artist or I want my writing to improve. It's like, well, there's work, there's exercises, there's work, you need to go to open mics so that you've had 50 chances of being on the stage to see what that's like, get over your nervousness.
Right.
One little tip that I would say to other writers, I read a great book about performers that they did a long time ago about thinking that stage fright was going to disappear. And so they went to all these people like, this is way back, like the Bob Hopes and Dean, these folks and said, so you're done with stage fright, right? And the people who were most successful as performers said, no, I have in my writer, I need a bucket near the curtain because I throw up. I need this here because I have to piss. I have to. And what they said they learned is that they used to beat themselves up because they're getting ready to go. And, oh, my stomach's upset again. Why can't my stomach be upset? I don't want it to be upset. I'm going to drink this. I'm going to do that. And instead, when they changed it to stop beating themselves up of, my body's telling me I'm getting ready to step in front of 5,000 people. This could go badly. There's reasons for me to be gearing up.
Yeah.
There's reasons for me to suddenly think I have a headache or something's going on that my hands are sweating profusely. And that's right. And then they stop focusing on trying to stop themselves from having this, taking it in, doing it, but concentrating on, and Paul Richmond, and being ready to go and stepping out and doing what they've been practicing. Like you said, you're ready for your 5 minutes of comedy, whether it's you thought it was funny, you're hoping they think it's funny, but it's not like you just thought it up and you've worked it out so it runs.
Yeah. I mean, to kind of connect it back to what you're doing, like sometimes sometimes you try a new line, right? Or you read, you think of, you're going along and you think of a new angle on that joke and you throw it out there and let's see what happens with this one, right? And you're also videotaping it and you can go back and look at it after. So Paul, I want to play one more piece of yours before I want to talk a little bit more about the publishing world bit and talk a little bit more about human error publishing. I did want to play one more piece before we start talking about that stuff. So the one I'm going to play is a piece that I came across called Being Upset. And I liked this piece. It's an older piece. I want to ask you about some of that on the other side of this. So I'm going to go ahead and hit play on this one. Okay.
Go for it.
All right, here we go.
Okay, sir, I'm sorry. There is nothing in my handbook about dealing with customers who are upset, okay? In fact, the manual doesn't even acknowledge that it's even possible for you to be upset or that you would even know how to be upset. I understand. It seems that there's a lot of marching in the streets, there's a lot of yelling and screaming, a little burning of buildings, destruction. I understand that looks like those are signs of you being upset, okay? But according to the manual, I'm sorry to say, being upset is not one of the options, okay? Either is getting mad, angry, anything like that. That's not listed as some of the choices that you have, okay? I don't know how to explain that to you. My superiors tell me that, if it's not clear to you, basically, you'll be beat or killed. That's kind of, helps discourage usually people from getting upset. We appreciate it if you would just cooperate. Why don't you just wait here in this room, okay, with these other people, and please don't talk to them about whether they're upset, okay? We'll let you know when we're going to talk to you about who you should direct your anger at, because it's much better for my superiors if your anger is kind of just generally misguided. While you're waiting, though, like I said, we'd rather don't talk to anybody else. Please don't ask if they're upset. Please don't hand out any of that information. Please no texting, twittering, flash mobs, dancing in the banks, all that kind of stuff, And listen, I don't know how many times we have to tell you the military budget is off limits, okay? It's just off limits. So stop handing out those leaflets and getting everyone riled up, okay? I mean, having a lot of people riled up and upset is a problem. I'm sure something can be worked out, or somebody will get something for you. I mean, do you need more chocolate? I mean, take another piece of pie if you like. I don't know if that will help. We're here to do whatever we can. Hopefully you get pacified. That's our job. Sleep outside a store and fight over a TV or something, okay? If you're going to continue to be upset, let me just explain this. It's not going to be easy on you, okay? I understand. It has been proven that people being upset, it does work to make change.
I love the end of this, right? Because you spend all this time talking about why people shouldn't be upset, right? You shouldn't be upset police, whoever they are. I imagine them in their stormtrooper-like gear coming in and telling you. But then we end there with exactly why you should be upset, right? Like I love that. I love the polls of that video and that message and where it ends. And so obviously we hadn't talked when I first listened to that, but as we've now been talking for almost an hour and a half, like I'm connecting that to some of the stuff we spoke about before, the what's happening message and ethos, right? Of activation, of activism, versus the whateverness or the it is what it is, right? Those are the is what it is police coming in to tell you. I have a completely new perspective on this piece now, having listened to it, Paul. For another time. It's just I'm sitting here just really reflecting on that. So I don't know if there's anything you wanted to tell us about that piece and its creation and how you view it now after some time.
Thanks. Well, it goes back a number of things you've said, and Jen said something about being, numb. I think too many people have been, call customer support or do something, and you're on the phone, and it's 5, click this, and our menu has changed, and it's to make it better, and it's not better. And you get to finally where you're supposed to be able to talk to someone and it hangs up, or they're not there and you're supposed to leave a message now, or whatever it is. And the old satisfaction, come in and return things, and we want you to be satisfied. And I did a similar piece in which I actually did kind of a back and forth of talking to someone where I said I was calling satisfaction guaranteed, and they were asking me, what did I need? And I said, I'm just not satisfied. And they would say, oh, so you need it, it didn't come with the right plugs. You need a different color. You need us to ship something. You run through all the stuff. So I did want to, there's a history. I saw a lot of things change. I saw women getting a little more respect, changing clothes, being seen, yet they're still not being paid equal rights. But there was a lot of things that happened that people had to really fight very hard for. 40-hour weeks, the people who died in unions, and all this different stuff that there's a history lost that, yes, it was a struggle. And when some people say to me, wow, you guys, the boomers, look, you destroyed everything. It's like, hey, wait a minute. When I was in high school, there weren't that many freaks. Woodstock was like, wow, there's a lot of us, but there wasn't a lot of us. There was small numbers in all the different towns. So it was kind of like realizing, we've always been in this place where there's a group of people trying to hold up the mirror. I think one of the great sci-fi movies is that one where the guy has the sunglasses and he puts them on and
They Live. Yeah, called They Live.
And then all of a sudden it's like it's not the billboards, but it's obey and there's control. And it's kind of, you're trying to bring back some realization that no segregation happened for a reason. No busing changing. The Black people could sit on buses, no gay. No, you had to say you were bi a long time ago, that, you really were normal, but once in a while you drifted, and then, no, okay, now you can say you're gay. And now you can say, well, I'm LGBT, a whole bunch of things. But is that, if the water is poisonous, does that matter? If you can't breathe the air, it all matters, but where are we joining together to try to, and so I wanted to, and with that piece, I wanted to try to say that, the customer's calling and they're getting, don't even try. it's like what you said about going into work and having to say it is what it is. The message is don't try. And you start to believe that it's not going to work, because you do try some things and it doesn't seem to work. And you realize, well, no, that, of course it's not going to work. They don't want it to work. We have to really make this happen, or you have to create it yourself. I think some people, don't realize how many of those things that happen in, like the food co-ops, they're very different now, but nobody knew what brown rice was or tofu. So many people decided to start making these, in basements, or food health officials freaked out because there were all these boxes open and people were just grabbing food. I'm glad it's gotten more sophisticated, but there were people who tried to make all these different things happen. Yeah. If women hadn't stood up and said, no, I'm not, and got put down for women's studies instead of the empowerment that they gave, and it made it into a cliche, burning bras, and they tried to really divert the issue that they were talking about, being raped, sold for their bodies, not equal pay. We're still fighting it. We're still, now
we're going backwards.
Wade,
Yeah. And, just along those lines, looking for hope, right? Like, one of the things I take tremendous hope from is what seems like a resurgence of unions in this country. I'm a union president.
Great.
For a large union in Western Massachusetts, and and seeing the revitalization of the labor movement, and people understanding they have power and being upset, right? It's what gets me up in the morning, honestly. And what's interesting is I realize in hearing you talk, I took that poem to a much darker place in my mind, right? I know it was about, now hearing you talk, I realized it was about calling a customer service line. In my mind, it was about, the play that was, the vision that was playing out in my head was the customer service people are showing up at your door.
Either way, I mean, they're all kind of connected, you know. Yeah, totally. But, that also, you know.
But I don't know if that speaks to for me, or for where we're at now versus when you wrote it and performed it, or and I, you know.
Well, that goes along with our whole conversation. The subtlety of that concept. Like I said, I have another piece where I actually list the menu items. Press 34 for a hysterectomy, press 35 for a colonoscopy, press 30, just run through all kinds of things that you might have to press through, not getting to finally press 98 to try to remember why you called. There's that, but this one was kind of, like you said, it was more the system-wide that I'm calling in to discuss and try to, so to get back to, because you want to get into the publishing and what this means about this. So I published this piece. You can say when you're talking about publishing, what is publishing? Yeah. It's getting in front of people to see besides yourself. People who have poems, they have them in their drawer or they have them on their computer, but no one else is seeing them. And will anybody want to read them or not? And putting them into a book and having it there. Now suddenly there's more people to see it. And some people have said to me, oh, you're curating these. And no, I'm not curating these. I'm picking and choosing people who I have seen read or come to me. I kind of have a closed submission. I'm not really, but taking supposedly, but I have calls every day and I'm 6 books in and there's like 8 more books people want. And so, and I'm feeling like what I'm trying to do is I think everybody, if they have an audience, they will see they have an audience. If they put their book out and their mother doesn't even want to read it, and it doesn't go anywhere, then they'll rethink about, well, maybe it's not the book. Maybe I'm too early. People don't know. I'm going to keep trying because I want to say these things. And so publishing to me is, it's this way. I grew up before, so a mimeograph machine, if anybody even knows what they are, was a revolutionary tool because with a stack of papers, you could print anything you wanted and hand it out. So there were so many magazines in the early 50s and 60s that what might be called indie now or something, but where people produced, stapled together women's poems or other people's things and passed them out. And they then got bigger and maybe they started to get ads and then they became the Voice or they became the Rolling Stones or whatever, the magazine. And so things move in that way. And we're always in this, who owns the technology? People complaining about whether Facebook blocks you or does this. And so it's interesting because like in the publishing world, there's really only 2 major big publishers. It's Amazon that has KDP as their printing place. And you have Ingram, which represents all the old publishing houses. And they, in a way, it seems like only got into the game because Amazon was making so much money off indie writers. They didn't really want to deal with all the writers that people who used Amazon used because they wanted to be the gatekeepers of saying, you're the best poet. Or you're
right.
A great New York, I think it was a New York Times article, one of those, New Yorker, where the person who sold the most books wasn't the person with MFA and hadn't been in those special magazines and hadn't won the award. It was some guy who lived in his parents' basement, was doing podcast, doing a show. After 5 years, had 300,000 people who were listening to him. He told him he was going to put out a book, and he sold 100,000 books. And the other person, with all the quote ways of going about it, went to the prestigious MFA school and only sold 40,000 books. And so their hit was, I guess we've moved to a new state in which everyone is creating their audience.
Yeah.
But do you have access to find an audience?
Right. Do you have access to the resources to be able to because even doing a podcast like this requires some amount of resources, right? You have to be able to pay the annual hosting fee and you need all of this technology to be able to do it. Right. So, it's not, there's a level of privilege there that I'm aware of in being able to have this platform and it's gotten
less and less and cheaper. And what you're using was only in studios for NBC before.
Right.
And now you can have it in your room. So there's people will get upset and say, you're using Amazon. And it's like, well, I don't want to use Ingram. And Or I'll say, well, Amazon's ex-wife donates to a lot of organizations, and we are in a contradictory thing where I'm using the beast to talk about the beast.
Yeah.
And that's, and this is, it's kind of a bizarre thing. And will it be stopped if too many people start listening? I don't know.
Well, I think I mentioned this earlier in a different context, but it's about polarization, right? And our tendency, things are either entirely all good or entirely all bad, right? And right. I think you're speaking to this. There's some potentially gray areas in there where you can use Amazon to help, potentially work against the bad things Amazon is doing too. Like that. I think that's...
And I see the change in people's lives. I mean, yeah. I've published over 45, I think, authors. A number of them, almost all of them, never thought they'd ever have a book. And it's totally changed them, and they've talked about that. They suddenly have realized, I didn't realize this was my audience, or I didn't realize I was really speaking to women who are considered overweight, or this or that, or I'm a veteran, or whatever it might be, and that they found their audience, which inspired them to realize they wanted to trust what they're feeling more and be a voice for that.
How do authors typically connect with you and connect with Human Error Publishing? Like how do you two come together?
Basically, in the beginning, it was because I was going to, like I said, all these festivals. And once I started to publish my own and I realized I could publish other people, I would talk to the people I saw coming off the stage, and they would say what I said. They couldn't get anybody to publish them, and I would say, I'll publish it. Some of that, and this has all changed over time, because some people got into, that's self-publishing. You'll never be respected. And it was like, actually, Benjamin Franklin self-published himself.
That's right.
And the mimeograph machine was publishing themselves. And so it's, again, the system somehow trying to make you feel like if you didn't, you went to a community college for your MFA. No, I went to Yale. And so, again, it's not really getting into, did you learn? Was there a fantastic teacher at that community college? And you have a great piece of work, So some of that happened because of me being in festivals. COVID threw a whole wrench into where's in performers now, so I couldn't see those people. But after I did a certain number of authors, and I'm known because I have created a lot of events for other poets. All my events that I've created were not just so that I had a venue. I mean, to have 175 other writers reading, it's not about me. I mean, there's a lot of performances happening. I'm not in them. And the people are performing, and people see that and have thanked me for, like the Garlic Arts Festival that, as Lee mentioned, was October 1st and 2nd this year. We're coming back after 2 years. I actually convinced those people, after doing it out in the woods, creating another space and building this space with trees and all kinds of things, to create a word stage and create an environment so that people came in and would realize that for an hour, 20 minutes, they were going to hear words.
That's amazing.
And the bizarre part about it is there's a big tent and there's chairs, but I left enough of an opening near where you kind of walk in, because I knew, and it turned out to be true, a lot of people stood there because they didn't want to feel like they were going to commit to sitting down and they're going to be trapped. So they were acting like, I'm just coming in, just what's going on in here, and then they'd stay for a whole writer or a whole half hour, which usually has 3 writers in it. And then they'd leave. Or some people would come up to me and go, I didn't know what this is. What is this word? And again, people were doing poetry, or they're doing this, or prose, or story. And again, if I would say it was poetry, probably nobody would come down to that stage.
Yeah.
And so people find me because of that. And then they see the books out by the folks. I do a monthly reading where there's a bunch of people, I put their books. So when their friends ask them, geez, who's the publisher who helped you get your book? If can I get a book? Then they refer them to me, and then I talk to them. And I actually do a Zoom thing like this with you, in the sense that we're creating the book together. And so if I can tell, it's not going to really work, or you think you're hiring me to do your book, I'm not a vanity press. So you're not paying me to publish.
Right.
I'm putting out your book. And if your book sells, then as a publisher, I make money because the book sold. so I have to pick and choose how many, because I could be doing this all day, all night. And like you said, and where's the sandwiches if your book only goes to your mother? I mean,
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. Thanks for explaining that to us. I think I know the answer to this, but
good. Tell me.
What is it? We'll do a Jeopardy thing. I'll give you the answer first. You can guess the question. What is it? What does it mean to you to be able to give an avenue and a pathway to some of these folks out into the world and to be seen? Like where you're at now in your journey, like what does it mean to you to be able to do this?
If I believe that there inherently is an anarchist concept that people are essentially good, and that in order for there to be democracy, you have to have a voice, and you have to know what your voice is, and you have to have the confidence of using your voice, and that you see that we're here to discuss. I'm not here to prove that I'm right and you're wrong. It goes back to things I learned in the Native American stuff of a circle, and I'm one point on the circle with a view, and I'm seeing what we're talking about from that point. You are now telling me something from that other point. And the question is, what are the truths? And how do we overlay on the truths to make something happen? And so if you don't have a voice, I don't see there any chance for democracy. And if you don't have confidence to have your voice, then I don't see a chance for democracy. And so my readings and giving people a mic and giving people an opportunity to, and people have said this, I never spoke in public. My voice would go, I couldn't get my voice to work in more than one person talking. And now they're up there talking and really expressing themselves. And it's not I'm only creating, I'm not a God that helps this and touch them and they're magically doing this. I'm just helping to create, and it comes out of that past of the happenings, the what's happening, that you created something. You attempted to, you believe that you figured out how to fix Volkswagens, and you put a sign up, and now you were fixing Volkswagens, and people came to you because you could fix Volkswagens and or Chevys or whatever you decided to do. And so I realized if there's no venues for this, then it's not going to happen. So I've been arrested many times and stood in lines and had the signs and thought another way of protest is I'm going to create these events. I'm going to create real areas of freedom of speech. Or sometimes people say, I can't believe you let that guy say that. I said, well, that was his 5 minutes. And yeah, that was pretty ugly. And that was pretty racist. And that definitely was sexist. But that's what he feels, actually. So maybe we should try to figure out how to talk to him. But that there's no space for it to happen. And there's no space to figure out, like you said, could you go over to the person with the gun and actually have a conversation? I mean, I think there's a woman at Smith who's been putting out this thing about calling in over calling out. I wish I could remember her name. And it's really good aspect about, she was saying, it's not 50-50. It's actually 75-25 maybe of people who agree. And if you're yelling at people, then you're keeping it 50-50. You're not trying to call in somebody to say, why are you doing that? I had this with Columbine. I was doing high schools performing. Columbine High School, the shooting happened. The next 2 weeks, all our shows, kids were coming dressed up as the Columbine kids.
Oh my gosh.
Various things were happening. And it was because it was almost like you realize the media was like, David Bowie changed his hair orange. And the next day, a whole bunch of people have orange hair. Right. A whole bunch of kids saw the symbol of the trench coats as I'm being beat up. I'm fighting back. The schools who took the time to say, why are you dressed like this? Who's beating you up? What's happening?
Right. And the media wants you to believe it's the trench coats. And
and some schools didn't ask the questions. They suddenly just wanted cameras, police, guns. And it was like, no. High schools have sometimes been very brutal places. And where are the adults? And who is watching what's going on and helping people to talk about, you shouldn't be treating people that way. So to not get off that too much, because like I said, we could talk for hours on this thing. In terms of the festivals, it's an act of civil disobedience, you could say, almost, because if there's no venue to happen, I'm trying to convince restaurants, bar fronts, parks, something, create my own. If I can, I'm doing now pop-up in Turner's Falls at the taco truck, Santo Taco. They have a parking lot, and they agreed to give me once in a while to put up my sound system, and people bring their own chairs. And I had these great word events, tacos and words.
Well, that's cool.
And other people show up and go, "What's going on here? What are people doing?" And then dealing with, some family just came up with kids. So could the person who's now saying, fuck you 40 times not do that poem because they don't, that we're trying to also respect Santo Taco and them doing business? Or do you see that as fighting your freedom of speech? But then at least you're there, you have all these conversations. And sometimes it can work out, sometimes it doesn't. So back to the publishing, to keep it as if we have an actual thread, it's part of that aspect of like creating the events. I'm helping I'm doing my little part in using the technology to help get out my own books and other people's books and have them. Now some people are on their second book. Some people, like Josh, did the book with me, and then he's got 3-4 other publishers that are doing his books, and so it's reinforcing, and I'm trying to give, it's like we were talking about, can you affect the person with the gun?
Yeah.
I feel like I've been getting feedback that of the 40 people who have published, and a lot of people who have come to my events, I feel honored when people say, I see you as someone with integrity. I see you helping us get out our work. I trust you with trying to do my book. Can you help me get my book out while you're not charging me? Okay, I'm sorry, I only sold 40 books. Okay, well, that's what you did. Somebody else sold 200. Okay, that wasn't bad. Whatever it is. Oh, it's a real thing. Do you want to go out and are you really trying to get your word out? Or
right. The work part of it we talked about before,
the hustle.
Right? The hustle.
Yeah.
You got to do it.
And is it a hustle, or is it just realizing, no, there's a lot of women who ran away at 15 and for a lot of different reasons.
Yeah.
And your book on running away at 15, why isn't it in all the women's halfway houses or somewhere? Because it's a real story.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's fascinating. So Paul, before we begin to transition into our last couple of questions, which will be a little lighter, I think, how can people find and support your work? What's the best way for people listening to this to see where you're at, to learn more about you?
If you go to Human Error Publishing, all one word, Human Error Publishing, ERROR, humanerrorpublishing.com, it will take you to a lot of the sites that are there. And, I've tried to do the Ko-fi, and there's, I have the pay-per-view channel that if you want to watch some things, you can donate as much as you want or not. Buying the books is always a good thing to do. There's the other parts of, I have had, and I've been in 2 different cities. One city that I got headhunted to be where I am now in the Turners, in a way, because I was having a hard time getting venues, and the Shea Theater and the River Culture, towns like Turner's Falls and East Hampton have hired artist coordinators who help make the events happen.
Yeah. And
so other places go, I wonder how come there's so many events happening in East Hampton, or why is everyone going to Turner's Falls to do this? They're having a Native American powwow. They're having a concert in the park. It's because they see that bringing. Sorry, what?
They invested in it.
Well, they created a person. So as an example,
yeah,
I won't mention the town. I said, I'm trying to, how do I have this festival? Well, you should go to the council and you have to get them. And there's this paperwork. And okay, so how do I get that? Well, you go get it. No. The River Culture came up and said, we want you. The Shea wants you. Here's the 4 farms. Sign. I filled them out. I'm going to take them to them. We're going to get this to work.
Yeah, it's crazy, Paul. We're involved somewhat in town politics, and we had somebody had the audacity to suggest to us recently that art doesn't drive economic development.
How many research? I mean, how many towns have spent hundreds of thousands of dollars to bring people in?
It's mind-boggling.
What do you need here? Well, you need affordable housing. Really? Oh, I didn't know that. Oh, artists, you need venues. Otherwise, artists can't do their work. Really? Oh, I didn't know that. Well, watch what happened. You had Northampton for a long time, had studio spaces, had cheaper rents. You took that away. They moved to Florence, and they moved to East Hampton. East Hampton has stopped the flow a little bit by putting rent control on some of the studio spaces, have created venues. Their rents are going up. Well, people move to West. I mean, you can watch this throughout history. I mean, all in New York. Oh, here's all the abandoned factories. Okay, all the artists. Oh, now there's coffee shops. Oh, now there's this.
Coffee shops. Sorry, I'm a little bitter. This is a bitter topic.
This is stomping Jen's raison d'etre.
Start stopping, Jen. Start stopping.
Oh, I've been stomping.
She's trying. She's doing a really good job of ringing the bell and trying to get people to pay attention to what's happening in towns like East Hampton and Turners and Holyoke
and Springfield, and I could just keep going on.
Yeah. It's amazing. So,
how would you define it really quickly? How would you define then what you see is happening?
I see that things are being transformed through arts and culture. It's driving economic development. It drives community development, brings people together, placemaking. I mean, the whole thing. Having events where people come together to share an experience helps drive the dollars in that community.
You're going to a restaurant. You're going to guess. Yeah. So why? So this is related to all the different things we've talked about.
Yeah.
Why is it not obvious?
I don't know because we don't want because the excuses are, we're just a quiet town with lots of open space, and we just we don't want to be like that city down the street. We don't want to be Amherst. If you want to go to that city, then why do you live here? Well,
yeah, I think
yeah.
I don't know the answer.
Yeah, sorry. I don't know the answer. Yeah. It's
hard.
I mean,
this is a good example.
Yeah,
because we could have any of the topics we talked about in this hour and a half, and say, why isn't any of those things we talked about obvious?
Mm-hmm.
And which makes it for us kind of discouraging and might make us. And I'm going to think, why do you think I don't like my water chunky? Water was never chunky.
It is what it is.
What is exactly? Yeah. What is all this stuff?
It's always
in the water?
Been that way. That way.
Yeah. What don't you remember about why it can't be? It was the champagne given to us by nature. It was amazing. And so I think we're trying. All this is. It's kind of trying to raise the veil. It's trying to make statements or say something, and it's the opposite because we see that they're good at. You say the lie long enough, people think it's true. So we're trying to say the truth long enough, hoping that it suddenly rings and go, you're right. The water wasn't chunky before,
Yeah. It kills me because I have this conversation all the time. Like, how is it not more obvious? I can't be the only person.
Well, we're trying.
Well, I mean, you would try to isolate to say, what don't you like? Okay. You don't want cheeky shops. Okay. That's fine.
Yeah.
Do we have, wait a minute, let's just start with, do you have arts in the school? Oh, you don't have any arts in the school. Okay. So none of these students will become artists. How do you plan on continuing to support the arts if there's not even arts in the school?
Yeah.
And I see that as a really big thing related to the headsets that we were talking about. Because when you're given a sheet of paper and there's a couple of different paintbrushes and there's a couple of different paints, and since someone says, try to paint something. Oh my God, look at it. It looks awful. And if you start to, again, go back to we were talking about experiential learning. Well, did you like the fat brushes better? Did you like the thinner brushes? How come everything you're using is red? Is that okay? What do no, it's not a Rembrandt. No, I thought it was a dog. You're telling me it's a bird. Okay. So, it doesn't really work. I mean, I tried to write a piece about that, that I decided it was my first time that I wanted the sticker from the art teacher and she thought I drew a dog and it's fine. It's really a bird, but I want the sticker.
Mm.
And
yeah. Well, we'll just keep trying.
Yeah. And it's I might know the name of this podcast. It might be What's Happening with Paul Richmond. I'm just kidding. We may,
No,
but still, that's
name.
the theme here. Is we've got to be activating, right, rather than accept.
And don't just give up. You got to practice and hone your mastery of a skill if that's important to you.
Whatever
Paul,
it is that, I mean, you have many different people who've been on your thing, and each of them became, you could say, quote, experts in what they presented. Did they go to the regular school, or was it because they just did it and trial and error, all the different stuff, you know?
Yeah. Lots of amazing stories about people who just stumbled into something and were like, oh my God, I didn't know this was my passion and that I could do this. And I'm going to try it. And here we go.
Yeah. But see that step right there that you just talked about is so scary do you even acknowledge your passion?
Yeah.
And when you see it, does it scare you because you think, nobody wants me to be an opera singer, or, I don't know what it might be.
Right. I can't make a living. I can't make a living being an opera singer. Well, yes, you can. And if you,
maybe it's not, but again, maybe you don't end up being an opera singer, but that type of singing, other people want to learn how you sing. I mean, I saw some old Kate Bush the other day and I just thought, isn't this interesting that she got her own acclaim, but how wild her pieces were and so non-pop of all the different stuff that was going on. And now how many people are actually copying it?
Was she sorry, go ahead, Paul. Yeah.
No, it's okay.
I was going to say, was she the one we heard that song on this?
Stranger Things.
There's a show we really like called Stranger Things. You may have heard about it.
She's back in the mainstream.
Yeah. They had this really beautiful Kate Bush song that's just
it's so funny
out of this world. Yeah.
So
and if you watched her, she was dancing, she had costumes, she was before kind of glam rock or this whole idea. She was bringing all kinds of art forms and emotional things into, she was going to do something and then the word. And it was like, no, I'm not just singing, I want to hold your hand, I want to hold your hand, I want to hold your hand. It was something else. Not that I want to hold your hand was a change and did open up stuff, but then if you just even follow the, rock and all those songs, who started to actually start saying some things? I mean, I see some things, what's war good for? The last poets, Gil Scott Herring. I mean, you have and on of people who suddenly took that genre and said, I'm going to talk about something.
Yeah. We could go on forever about this stuff. What popped into my mind was the Beatles, like where they went in the short period of time from where they started, right? I Want to Hold Your Hand to the White Album. And then I was thinking about Dylan, like Bob Dylan, who would have thought in, the late 50s and early 60s that he would have won a Nobel Prize for literature, and that, in the ways that he transformed music and culture. And I listen to his songs sometimes and his words, and I just tear up. And he talks about, you listen to him, he talks about, I wasn't even conscious when I wrote these songs. I felt like that was being channeled through me. Like, I don't even know how they were. Anyways, sorry.
Yeah. It's no. I mean, and this is where, it gets me going in terms of the schools. And because sometimes when I try to do classes, people say, I don't like poetry, I'm not a writer, I don't. Yeah. And then I'll say, what's your favorite music? And they'll list somebody. I said, well, what do you think of those words? Oh yeah, I like those words. Well,
what do they mean?
Well, and is that poetry or is that writing? Or do you want to write like that? Let's not call it poetry. Do you want to write like that? Or do you have things to say like that?
Yeah.
And so again, it's really about getting your voice and the words and as you said with your comedy act, you learn that, I may want to say this, but trying to really hone it so it's said in a way that it might be funny, or you show the contradictions and the irony or whatever it is, and that we can walk away seeing our humanity in it. So I'm not just saying, okay, let's all go and cut our wrists.
Right. Yeah. Oh, thanks, Paul, for those words. Anything else you wanted to tell us before we go into our last couple of questions?
last couple of questions. Wow. No, I was just going to thank you guys for spending all this time, and no, go for your last couple of questions.
All right, cool. So we've talked a lot about spoken word performance, publishing, juggling. What do you like to do when you're not doing any of those things to kind of bring you back to yourself and just, take it easy and relax? And what do you like to do for fun?
It's interesting because I think long ago when I first was joked with people, when I thought about being an artist, quote artist, I realized that it gave me this umbrella that if someone asked me about the clothes I was wearing, well, I'm an artist.
Yeah.
They asked me about why I was living in this studio or what I was doing. Well, because I'm an artist. And the reality of that is being creative is something that I like and I get off on. And, somebody could say, oh, you came from this drug culture and now, aren't you happy that marijuana's legal? And I was like, I'm not necessarily, because I sort of feel like everything has always been made into, farmers who grow coke leaves ate them for hundreds of years and were not coke addicts.
Right.
Now you take that and synthesize it and formulate it and make it into crack, and now you got some problems, and cocaine. And so there's a part from some writing, I'm actually answering this if it seems like I'm going around, but there is a part in history where there was a lot of written about what's your great work. And they used that phrase for a certain period of time. And it was interesting because it was implying, do you think you're here for some reason? Was I here just to get the house in the country, to have the 2 kids, to have the car? What's the scenario that I'm mapping out that I say I've lived a successful life?
Right.
Or does the word successful come in? Because I can feed myself. Oh, I do have clothes. Oh, I have enough money for health care. Without some of those things, you can't think about too much at all because you're hurting, you're in pain. You're not going to be creating because you can't do it. But in that, I'm always running scenarios because I was a juggler and doing vaudeville. And as an artist, in terms of writing, even if I'm just enjoying having coffee at a coffee shop outside, watching people, I'm seeing, oh, look at that couple, and oh man, they're going to break up soon, and she is looking in a different direction, and they're walking, and he's pleading. He's, she just told him, I'm out of here, and he's giving the rap that, don't, and you can see it in body language, things that you go, oh wow, okay, that's a sad one, or this is happening, or oh, there's the mother talking, and you can tell by the girl that she's, yeah, mom, yeah, I'm okay, and no, they've lost, and so people and life, and my eternal hope that we are given this amazing place to live. Yeah. And there's so many amazing places we all haven't seen. And what a different thing it would be as if we were really here trying to preserve it. Help it. You can't preserve anything. It's always changing, but to be living with a minimal footprint. So it's doing what it's doing and we're here with it. We're not controlling it. We're dancing with it. Is what I hope for. So I'm always looking for that. And I'm always I'm thinking about that. So, and I'm trying to come up with it entertains me to come up with the storylines of, I'm going to call customer service, or you might've seen the thing about pushing the button at the parking garage.
Yeah.
When I get to it, so there I was at a parking garage, a couple of those things started to happen. I just thought, oh, here it is. This is the thing about, yep, you're in a situation where you're told to push this button and something's supposed to happen and it doesn't happen. Yeah. Now what? Push the button again. Well, no, it's not happening. Yeah. So that, it may sound weird. I love swimming. I was just swimming twice today. I'm honored that I live where I live because there's some ponds and some lakes, and I don't drive in traffic for 3 hours to try to get to the lake. And
do you prefer outdoor swimming?
Yeah, I mean, I mostly during the summers of being in these, Ispan or Lake Mattawa or the Green River, or places that are really nice. The towns have spent time trying to preserve. I mean, trying to still be able to swim. I mean, I grew up in Buffalo, where by high school I couldn't swim in Lake Erie. It was burning, and you were getting rashes from the water.
Oh,
and
God.
Things that people don't really realize what the steel plants are doing. We used to joke about, let's go play Jesus because we can walk across the water. When you live in a city like that had so much environmental garbage and destruction with Love Canal and everything else, you just realize, no, there was choices made. They're real, and so I have so in that way, what gives me this is I'm not on a religious mission, but I care about future generations. Yeah. And I'm glad for the people who I am standing on their bones now, who tried to do things to make life here as amazing as it really is.
Yeah. And I think, and I hope it's a long time from now, you'll be leaving some solid bones for people to stand on. I think it's obvious you're doing that work and trying to help.
I did a piece recently about, I know I'm an old, because I had a form I was trying to fill out.
I saw that.
I had a form that I was trying to fill out. There was no box for old white guy. And I just thought, I get it. Old white guys should step aside, but stop throwing dirt on me. I'm not done yet. I don't want, you don't have to throw dirt on me now,
Yeah. All right. I'll move us to our last question.
This better be a good one.
It's a good one. And I think you might have an easy answer for this one. What have you experienced that you can't explain?
Interesting. The acknowledgement that there's other paranormal. There's other.
Please go ahead. Yes.
There's realities that aren't explained by people or not accepted by them that my family had, or when you are open to it, other people talk to you about theirs.
Yeah.
And there's just way too many stories of, and not to get into what does it mean, but it's more of just acknowledging that happened.
What?
Was it just a coincidence that this, or no, no, was something else. I mean, real quick story was someone that I met who heard their father calling them, was dead. It got louder and louder and louder, and their friends who knew that they had these experiences said, "Why don't you go to the grave?" She got there, and her brother was digging up the grave because he was upset that the father was buried in Belgium and wanted him to be buried in Germany. And so she called the police, and they talked, and they stopped him, and because he wanted to be buried in Belgium.
Wow. And
so you go, did she make that up, or why did that happen, and how do you explain that? But as I said, we could have a whole podcast of all this stories like that were in my life, where people I knew or something happened that I have to say, I'm not telling you to believe or not believe. I'm just telling you this is what happened, and it's not in the book.
Yeah. I'm with you on that. I think the more I always tell Stomping Jen, I feel like I sound crazy when I say this, the more I research and study the UFO phenomenon, for example, which are now called UAP. They have a new name, but it has all sorts of connections to the paranormal, and it's a fascinating subject. And I'm becoming more and more convinced the older I get that there's a lot of validity to it. So,
well, it's even thinking about the Native American cultures and other cultures who talked about talking to the tree spirits, or talking to this or that, and how that was all put down. And in some ways, people have said, when you think of shamans or people who medicine who use plants, if you read any of the old history they'll say their answers many times were the plants told them.
Yeah.
And people will blow that off. Like, what are you talking about? That's not. And so it's really about having an awareness. Can you have an awareness about yourself? And can you have stop long enough to have an awareness about, I don't know if we have quick time. We have these big, large bumblebees they're carpenter bumblebees that go into wood, and they're amazing. I called them sometimes military wet dreams, because the ability for them to like zoom up and down, backwards, turn around, do this, is like, what a machinery of, you can actually fly and do that.
Yeah. And
what I realized was people were freaked out on our porch, and we started just sitting there, and they would come up, get pretty close, look at us, and realize, oh, okay, it's you. They had territory that they were defending and we started watching them do these battles, and now they don't bother us at all. And people come by and they go, these things are really buzzing around. It's like, yeah, they're just doing their thing. I don't need to be swatting them, and I don't need to be doing anything. They're not hurting me. They're not. Once they see I'm on the porch, they just go and do what they're doing. I'm a distraction. If they keep watching me, they got to stop what's happening in their own tribe.
Yeah.
And so, it's just a short thing of how much time and maybe artists get into this more, because you have to take time to look around you to pick something up to then express it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I love those bees. And unfortunately, I have a dog that is obsessed with eating bees. So we don't see too many of them around anymore.
Hey, well, it's an interesting there's that dynamic also. Yeah. There's that world. It's not all the like, oh, Disney, isn't that cute? No, that animal just ate the other one. Okay,
oh my God. She ate the head off a baby rabbit the other day, and our son watched it and came in and told us all about it in horrific detail. And we're like, okay, that's enough.
All right.
A little reality here. Okay.
On that dark note, Stomping Jen,
yes.
Let's
Thank you both for creating this platform.
Yeah, and
bringing people in.
Yeah, and thank you for joining us, Paul. I really enjoyed talking with you, and I have to say, I warned you before we started recording. I was trying to keep these to an hour. We've gone over over 2 hours now, so I think that's
you only listen to a minute. Try to pick out the best minute.
No. I think that's a testament to the message, the person, all of that stuff. So thank you. Really. I really enjoyed talking with you and all of the things we chatted about. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Same here. That was great.
To our listeners, a couple of quick things. If you're hearing us for the first time, please subscribe to our podcast, download our episodes.
Leave us a review.
Leave us a review on Apple
Donate.
Yeah, leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. Paul mentioned it, so I'll just say
we do have a website.
We do have a website with a donate button. It's softservepodcast.com. Okay, go check that out. There's lots of stuff on there. There's information about Jen. There's information about me, and we have links to episodes we think you'll find interesting. So go check it out. And finally, what else? Anything else?
I think that's it.
That's it.
That's a wrap.
All right, Paul, you want to say goodbye in whatever special way you like to do that? Feel free.
Okay, I'll do it with this short story that's about 40 pages. No, thanks, guys. Thanks, appreciate it. Folks, listen in. They've got a lot of great stuff. I checked it out myself.
Thanks, Paul. Stomping Jen.
Bye now.
All right, folks, you heard Stomping Jen, and without further ado, bye now.
This world of ours, ever growing smaller, must avoid becoming a community of dreadful fear and hate. Those who have freedom will understand also its heavy responsibility. That all who are insensitive to the needs of others will learn charity, and that the sources, scourges of poverty, disease, and ignorance will be made disappear from the earth. And that in the goodness of time, all peoples will come to live together in a peace guaranteed by the binding force of mutual respect and love. I shall never cease to do what little I can to help the world advance along that road.